Hi, Geoff.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you again.
Likewise.
Haven't seen you since the last time. I don't want to see you again either till the next time. I always say that to Sharon. I don't want to have that food again till the next time.
So we're here to talk about your two features.
Yes.
Retaliation, which was formerly known as Romans.
Well, there's three features. We've got Clubbed, Retaliation, which is Romans, and the Pyramid Text. But we're just going to talk about the latter two.
Yeah.
If that's okay.
So shall we reference Retaliation as Romans or Romans as Retaliation?
As both. It's okay. Both, yeah.
Because I know you like the title of Romans.
Yeah, I like Romans better. It's braver. It's more honest.
And it's what I remember. It was
we wrote it
title
as Romans because it was intriguing, and people go, "Well, what does that mean?" And obviously, when you go into the film, it refers to Romans 12:20, which is one of the epistles from St. Paul, and it's basically the kernel of the whole film. Vengeance belongs to me, and I shall repay. Talking about reciprocity, it's saying we don't need to seek revenge. Revenge is a parasite. Anger, resentment, fear, dissonance, they're parasites, and they feed off anger, fear, dissonance. Pain bodies feed off pain bodies, to paraphrase Eckhart Tolle. So the idea for me was not to, the film, the title Retaliation, which is what they changed it to later, the production team, is a kind of a quiet conceit. It's kind of hinting that it's about revenge, and it's not about revenge. Obviously, we had no control with that, but
it was to sell the film and make it look more exciting.
It's to sell the film, but it's kind of slightly dishonest, isn't it? But that, like I said, it was out of our hands. We haven't got no control with that. So I like the title Romans, but if you want to search for it, it's Retaliation. And we know the film is based on my life. It's kind of the arc of the film is my life, and then it's fictionalized so that it encompasses lots of other people's stories. So it's not just my story, but the arc of it, which is being abused, being groomed, being abused, and then the aftermath of that, which is self-abuse, psychotic jealousy, paranoia, all of the things that happen to people quietly after they've been abused that they don't realise it is even happening. Deep insecurity. Later, when I started to look at this stuff and try and clean it, I unfortunately it tripped into displacement. So I had 10 years of being violent, thinking I'm protecting myself and protecting the world, but I'm actually just feeding a fat parasite in me. So I displaced that. I had a massive amount of energy, and I displaced it when I became a bouncer. So this is kind of saying that this is a film that's saying abuse is possession. When somebody abuses you and you've still got the resentment or the wound or the scar or the memory, mostly dissonance, mostly confusion, that's what attacked me most. When it's still in you, it acts as a parasite, and it feeds off similar energies. So you find yourself attracted to drama, you find yourself attracted to paranoia, jealousy, you find yourself attracted to violence, you find yourself attracted, for me personally, my hands weren't even my own hands. I couldn't even trust my own hands. So I would self-abuse, physically self-abuse by, you can see I've smashed all my hands up. You can see I've took all the prettiness away. Got a broken nose, cauliflower ears. I tried to get rid of all of the things. When I was a kid, I looked like a little girl. So I tried to get rid of all of the things that made me attractive to men or to perverted men. And I didn't even know I was doing that consciously. It was only writing about the film, that in the film that enabled me to individuate that, bring it up and process it. So I realised that all of this war paint, this massive back, and this ability to kill in 30 languages, was just armour and just war paint. And just big symbolic signals saying, keep away from me, I'm dangerous. But inside, I was just a wounded kid. So the film was me writing about that in order to locate the parasite. So somebody abuses you, they take away your part of your autonomy, they leave you in a state of terror and mostly confusion, because you're thinking, not quite sure why this happened. How did it happen? How could it happen? And why hasn't it been fixed? It leaves you in this place where you're constantly in fear of it happening again, even as an adult. And it's not, you don't really even link it. It's not like you link it, you know, you don't sit there thinking, well, I was abused when I was a kid, so someone else is going to attack me. There's just that sense of dread all the time. So you build up protection to try and save yourself from that. But of course, you build up this armory to protect yourself, but this armory becomes a prison. So the part of you that needs to heal, the part of you that needs to repair, is kind of locked away, and you're protecting it with all this armory. So this film was partly about me looking at the situation, bringing it into light, so that hopefully it could become a light. So I cleaned it, and in that's, you know, when people look at my arc and they see that I've written about and talked about this story a lot, and I write about it and talk about it a lot because I'm like a pin in a crab shell. I'm trying to get out every last remnant. I'm trying to get every last part of that poison, that parasite out. So when somebody abuses you, they leave a parasite in you. They possess you. Part of them possesses you. So even over time and space, even if they're dead, they're still climbing inside you. They're still abusing you. So I was abusing myself even into my 40s, not even knowing I was doing it. Not knowing that I knew I had no control over it, because it would come over me like a lust. And I'd find myself physically abusing, sexually abusing myself, and not knowing I was doing it. And then feeling racked with shame and guilt and confusion afterwards. So the parasite feeds off the lust, it feeds off the abuse, and then afterwards it has its supper and its pudding, its dessert on the fathom deep shame that you have, and the confusion. I mean, I was writing about it only the other day. I'm writing a book at the moment about how to overcome evil with good. And I was writing about it, and I realised that the thing that wounded me most, Paul, and this is what Romans helped me to see, the thing that wounded me most wasn't the sexual abuse. People have had worse sexual abuse than me. It was the dissonance. It was the confusion that this person I trusted. I mean, I was 11, by the way, so trust didn't even come into it. I just gave my whatever it was, my trust over to this person. So when you wake up in the middle of the night and somebody's abusing you, the terror comes from the confusion. You just cannot fathom what's going on, and you don't understand what's going on, and then you're so assailed afterwards by the fear of people knowing about it that you don't tell anybody. So of course it cocoons itself and grows inside like a seed. But it was the confusion and the dissonance that damaged me the most. And then when I did speak to people about it, there was always a sense of, well, what did you do? You know, what did you do to lead him on? Why did that happen to you? There's no smoke without fire. And then there was a suggestion that you were compliant, but you're a kid. How can you be compliant? There's no such thing as compliancy when you're a child. And do you lead him on? I hardly kissed a girl, you know, and that added to the confusion. And of course, later I realised that everybody in my life was just as wounded by it as me and just as confused, and they were just as afraid. When you tell people that something's happened after a few years and you're brave enough to bring it out, it's like dropping a cluster bomb in their kitchen. They don't know how to deal with it. And they deal with it in the way they can. And normally that's through denial or through projection, or, you know, projecting the blame onto you. So that adds to the confusion. And then you've got the old culture and the religion in the back of your head, which is like God protects. And you're thinking, well, where was God? Where was that? So there's confusion on every level. And you don't realise until you write a film like Romans that the confusion is the weapon of the parasite. Right. So the person that puts the parasite into you, he's also abused. He's also damaged. I don't see it as coming from him. He's not my enemy. There's a force behind him. There is a force prevalent in the world, in this reality, that works through people, gets me fighting with you, both of us arguing, both of us causing an energy burst with our drama, but something else is feeding from it. It's got a partner in us. got a parasite in us, but it's another force feeding through you to me, and it's passed on like a virus. And we find out later that forgiveness is like the antibody. It goes in and cleans it out. But the parasite does everything to direct you away from it. So it doesn't want you to look at it. It wants you to remain perpetually in a state of confusion, because if you're confused, that's drama. There's no worse pain than dissonance, cognitive dissonance, when the data coming in conflicts with the data that's there. And that leaves you in a perpetual state of anxiety. So it constantly redirects you away from the fact that there is a cause to this, and that's the parasite inside you. So writing the film, I'm not really a film writer, and I'm not really a playwright, and I'm not really a novelist, and I'm not really an article writer, and I'm not really a book writer. I just write in order to cleanse. So I have to find this parasite, and the only way to find the parasite is to go beyond those levels of fear, beyond those levels of confusion, and find the part of me that has never been abused. Find the part of me that is original, that is authentic. Find the part of me that is beyond abuse, that is beyond harm, that is beyond colour. It's not black or white. It's not class. It's not like working class and white. It's none of those things. I was brought up as a lower working class white male. None of that exists. It's just nonsense. Beyond that, when you reach the geometric point, the soul, when you get to the singularity of who you are, none of that exists. So we're going beyond the wound. But to get beyond the wound, you have to go through the wound. And the wound is a hell realm. And to do that, you have to stand in front of it. You have to absorb 99% of it. And it will do everything in its power, including bringing up abject terror and fear and anxiety and depression, to stop you penetrating it. Because once you find the core, once you find that little light within you, your soul, that light will start to expand, and it will start to dissipate all of that parasite. So this is about not getting revenge on the person that abused me. I'm not interested in him. I give him over to reciprocity. I understand enough about forgiveness to recognise that I can't pardon this person. I haven't got that power. Only contrite remorse can pardon him, and that's got to come from him. What I can do is I can give him back over to a reciprocal force, to the law of equal and opposite returns. And to do that, I've got to believe that's true. But you don't have to go through very many layers of consciousness before you see that reciprocity is true. Nobody escapes the human condition. Nobody escapes the consequence of their action. So I don't need to worry about him being damaged. I need to find the parasite in me. I need to go beyond the parasite by absorbing 99% of it, by taking all of its blag, all of its posturing, all of its fear. I've got to sit in the middle of those passions, and this takes absolute control. And then I have to go beyond that and find my own light. And then once I find my own light and let that light wake up, because that light is covered by veils and veils and veils of pain, wound, confusion, dissonance, and not just all that, but all of the things I've done since I was abused. That parasite has worked through me, and I've done lots of harm in the world. I've battered people as a bouncer, not despite what happened to me, but because of what happened to me. I was so afraid of the world that I allowed that to come through I allowed that to become my perception, and I created enemies in the world, and I went out and I destroyed them. But there was too many enemies, because this parasite, every time I killed one enemy, it fed on it, got fat, and then got another. So the idea of writing Romans is really just to is to stand in front of the thing I'm afraid of, stand in front of the confusion, go through the confusion and find the light. Once I've ignited the light, it gradually just starts to expand, and it starts to clean everything. And I did that by piecemeal. So I wrote about it in Watch My Back a little bit. Then I wrote about it when we did our film Romans 12:20. I wrote about it a lot. And then I wrote about it. Then I did a stage play called Fragile, where I wrote about all of it, all of the stuff that blackmailed me, all of the stuff in me that was calling me a deviant and saying I was disgusting and dirty, and that if anybody found out what I did to myself and what I was really like when the lights were off and I was on my own, that I would be cancelled by my wife, by my family, by my kids, by my agent. I'd be cancelled by everybody. And God thought I was disgusting anyway. This was the stuff that was blackmailing me. So when I wrote Fragile, which led on to Romans, I wrote all that down. I put it in front of an audience, and over the period of 2 weeks, I know, this was on every day, and with 2 matinees. An audience sat in front of that and helped me to clean it. But everything tried to stop that play coming on. I was so terrified. I had to absorb all of those passions. In fact, on the day of the play, the day the play was going to go on, I was so afraid that I broke my ribs training. And that was like, well, you don't need to go now because you got broken ribs and you can't even get there, you can't even walk. You're in too much pain. And I just said, I don't care whether my legs are broken, I'll crawl there, I'm going to be there. And I was so nervous. And you know what I was most nervous of? Most nervous about my mum seeing the play and my mum thinking that this was about her. And it wasn't about my mum. This was about me bringing out all of my complaints, all of the things this parasite had been saying, and cleaning them.
Did she watch the play?
No.
And were there any other family members that you were nervous
All my
about
kids
watching?
watched it. No, I wasn't worried about my kids. I was worried about Sharon watching it because there were things in there that I'd done to myself that she didn't know about. Well, nobody knew about. It was a secret that only I kept just to myself. And I wasn't even aware that it was a secret. I just was aware that when I come to write about it, there was a lot of fear there. So Sharon said, "You're really nervous about this play. You're not normally this bad." And I said, "Well, I'm writing things I've never written before or shared." And she said, "Ask me what?" And I told her. And she said, "Well, you've never done that to yourself." I said, "I've been doing that to myself all my adult life, or it's been done to me. I don't even know I'm doing it. I can't stop it. This is my way of stopping it. This is my way of bringing it into the light so that it can become a light." And that's how I did it. That's what I did. So this whole thing was about me going through. This was about me taking the story and saying to the story, qualify yourself. You think that it's your mum's fault, qualify that. You think it's your dad's fault, qualify that. You're saying it's this abuser's fault, qualify that. You're saying that it's the police's fault because they did nothing about it, qualify it. You're blaming God, qualify that. And when I wrote the play, I couldn't qualify any of it. All I saw around me was lots of people in pain, lots of people wounded by what happened to me. And I was able to break that story down into its component parts and then reform it into the story of where I am now.
And what happened after after the play finished? Like in terms of your relationship, how did that change with people that you loved?
Well, with my mum, I used to go to my mum's and I used to feel as though I had to protect myself. I felt as though if I wasn't on my guard, she'd climb inside me and batter me. Sometimes I'd come back and Sharon would say, "How was your mum today?" And I'd start crying. And I'd say, "Oh, she's battered me." So I had this sense that that anybody that climbed inside me would abuse me, would take over my autonomy. And once I disqualified all that in the play, I just couldn't stop hugging her. I couldn't stop embracing her. I never ever had any of that feeling again. All I saw with my mum was a very beautifully a beautiful mother who just wanted to defend me, who would take her back to anybody against if anyone hurt me. So I just wanted to protect her. That's what the play's called Fragile, because I was worried about my mum being hurt by this play, so I called it, and I said, "She's fragile. I don't want her to be hurt by it." But none of the things that were blackmailing me could qualify themselves. When it said that people are going to think you're disgusting when you admit what happened to you, when you admit people are going to blame you. None of that happened. In fact, people were crying, people were embracing me, because it gave them permission. They said, "Well, if Geoff can talk about this, then I can talk about my stuff." So this was about locating the parasite and then killing all the things that feed the parasite, recognizing that I was possessed by whatever this person had put in me. This is what they say in Judaism. If you see the person that's harmed you or abused you, run after him and serve him, because he's got something of yours and you need it back. So this person has stolen a big part of my autonomy. Every decision I made in my life after that abuse was determined by my fear of it happening again. So my life was largely curtailed by what happened. When I turned that around, I went into it. I used the energy that I'd released from looking at it. I had a massive amount of energy, and that's what became my prolific outlet, my prolific workload, my prolific output. So my relationship with everybody after this was different, with everybody. So with my mom, it just became unconditional love. With Sharon, it became unconditional love, because she looked at all this stuff and she didn't love me less, she loved me more. She didn't embrace me less, she embraced me more. My relationship with everybody became better. I stopped judging people. I stopped looking at people from a place of judgment, because I don't know what their wound is. And then I recognized that each time I wrote about it or talked about it, I was able to clean it a little bit more and clean it a little bit more, until eventually this parasite was perished and was able to be completely dissipated. So I see myself as if you imagine like you're a house. I'm paraphrasing from the Zohar now, but it talks about light coming through the window of a house. And the light can only penetrate the house. It can only penetrate the house according to what the obstacles are. So if there are walls and closed doors, it can't get through to them. So you can close a room off in a house so tightly that no light can get to it at all. It doesn't mean there's no light, it just means you've closed off. So what I started to do was recognize this house, this vessel, and I started to remove everything that was an obstacle to light, so I could bring light in and it could permeate everything. So I could ignite the light in me and bring the light in from the outside, and the assistance came from everywhere. So I wrote Fragile, then I wrote I wrote Romans 12:20 then, and then I wrote Romans, and I could feel this pain in my body here, in my dantian. Something was massive. It felt like a bus trying to come through a pinhole. And I spoke to it and I said, I can feel you, but I don't know what you are and I don't know what you want. And it says, you know what I am and you know what I want. I said, well, tell me. I need to know. He said, I want to be out of you. I want eternity out of you, because I'd already stopped feeding it. I was starving it. I want eternity out of you. I said, where do you want eternity out of me? And he said, Romans. And I said, well, I've already written Romans 12:20.
And just to be clear for people who are listening, Romans 12:20 was the short version
of Romans, the feature.
Yeah.
So I'd already written Romans 12:20, and I thought, I've cleaned this, I've done this. And it said, no, I want to be out of you in Romans, in a feature film. I want individuation. I want you to transfigure me and put me into something else. So I found this energy and I communicated with it, like talking with demons. In the Desert Fathers was called antiretikos, which is talking back. So I had a communication with this energy. And then I just said, okay. So I sat down, I wrote it into a feature film. And then every layer of that film, every draft of that film was torture. I mean, you can remember me and you meeting in BAFTA, and I said to you, I'm dying. I got all the way down on the train. I didn't want to write this. I didn't want to go there again. I said, we need to sit in BAFTA, and I need to go over this and on this new draft until it's finished, because I can't keep going here. And of course, I did keep going there, but it was so painful. So I just kept going into it, and I kept recognizing that beyond this bluster, beyond this posturing, was light. My true self is unwounded, it's unharmed, it can't be harmed, it's unassailable. I needed to locate that. So every time I did a rewrite, and then when we got Orlando on board and we went to his house in London, do you remember?
Yeah.
And I remember that I probably looked okay, and I probably looked quite calm, because me and you were wrestling in Orlando's house, and it was all that, it was nice. But inside I was dying. I was like, I can do 2 hours. but then I've got to go. But we had 2 hours in the pub with him before we went, having a coffee and eating. And then we went to his house, and I thought, I can last 2 hours. And I think we spent the first half an hour wrestling and talking and joking. And then Orlando come out with he was so meticulous with his notes. And you could look at it and think this is notes about the film. It's not. He was helping me on a spiritual level to pick out every last remnant. Why is he doing this to himself? Why is he doing that? What's his purpose there? Now, I'm either honest or I'm dishonest. So I have to say this is what he was doing. So it made me bring out all the facts about the film. It made me go into the corners and find aspects that I hadn't realised were there. You know, it made me go into every last corner. So this parasite had left little bits. It scattered everywhere in me. And working with Orlando, because in the end I remember thinking, we'd been there 4 or 5 hours, I remember talking to God and saying, I'll stay as long as you want. I just wanted to go home. I wanted to be with my wife. I wanted to be walking across my field. I wanted peace.
I think we were there for 6 hours.
It was
probably more.
It felt like longer. Yeah.
And this is Orlando Bloom.
Orlando Bloom. Yeah. So he was at his house. So he was a big help in helping me to clean this, and that was the biggest clean I've ever done. I think the biggest clean was Fragile, but then this came in afterwards and picked up all the debris, all the bits that I'd missed. And then when I wrote about it again in The Divine CEO, and I just brought out all the stuff that was blackmailing me. The reason Romans or Retaliation is such a powerful film is because the honesty is unflinching. It's blistering. It's saying these are the things that are blackmailing me, and they're a lie. They're all a lie. But you have to absorb 99% of them before you get to the light. Because there's light in that as well. In the parasite, there's light. There's nothing that hasn't got light in it. So I had to locate the parasite and take the light from the parasite. So the parasite itself could be liberated. And the effulgence that's locked in the parasite, in the wound, comes over to me. And then I expand in consciousness. And when I say expand in consciousness, it just means I'm able to see everything a little bit clearer. So afterwards, after these films, after the plays, I just loved everybody. I just wanted to love everybody.